This house was built in 1918, and the old man had said, "This will always be a house. We will never sell out to the corporations, and this entire town will be built around this house." And after they moved out, they started to sublet parts, and in 2014, I had been looking at this place for years, and I kept wanting it, and finally it became available. And now I do all my cases from here. This is now the office, the main office for Global Pursuit, and it works perfectly. And this is the perfect private detective office, perfect for me to work out of. And this is Global Pursuit Investigations, and this is our main office, and this is my story. My name is Logan Clarke. Had to steal your kids back and forth. Terrible. But anyway, I've not only done the child stealing, which I've gone all over the world, from one end of the side of the world to the next. I can't possibly shorten my career. I can't start there. My career is so filled with stuff. Probably in Sudan, rescuing a 4-year-old blonde girl, German girl. And she was 4 years old. She had blonde hair and blue eyes. Her mother was working in Ethiopia. And they were in the market, in the souk, what's called the souk market. And the child was there with her. She turned to gather some, or ask for a price for something, and her child was scooped up by someone in a Jeep, the passenger side, and taken. And a long story short, she could not find her. The police couldn't find her, anything. She was obviously kidnapped. She called her uncle, and her uncle happened to be a very powerful judge in another country, and I don't want to say where, but he was a very powerful judge. And she called him, and he couldn't declare war on Sudan and send troops in there, and Ethiopia is right below Sudan. They had talked to me on the telephone. I guess they talked to a couple of different private detectives, but they talked to me on the telephone, and I was explaining that probably would be somewhere in Sudan. This was pretty fast after the kidnapping, and because they would be headed to Tanzania, where the market is for children and adults. At that time, they actually sold people just like horses in Tanzania and different parts of the world. And for a blonde-haired, blue-eyed 4-year-old girl, you get a lot of money then. So anyway, they wound up hiring me and my team, and we had to go into Sudan, which Americans were not allowed into, and there was no U.S. embassy in there because we did not have diplomatic relations with that country. Clinton had cut it off at that time. So my team, which consisted of 3 other men, had to come in from different countries, literally. One went to Egypt, I went to Dubai and then Abu Dhabi, and to get visas and come in separately. I had a Persian investigator with me, and we all came in differently, as though we didn't know each other, and from different countries. But like every case, it became insane from that moment on. My Persian guy, Egypt, there's only one flight a week into Sudan. One flight a week, no matter where you're coming from. So pictures. So the guy in Egypt is sitting, he has boarded his plane. We were all going to meet there at the exact same time. But the guy in Egypt has boarded his plane, and the dolly had the fork, or the forklift. This guy was driving a forklift, but he had the two prongs of it up here, and he's driving down here, so it's above him. And he drove right through the cabin of the plane that was going to Sudan. So he was delayed. And each delay, delays everybody. You can't begin the operation until everybody gets there. So, and I'm in Abu Dhabi, and the sheikh is getting me a visa. Oh, no problem, I'll just send you down. And Sudan wasn't big enough to have an embassy of their own, so it was mixed with the UAE embassy or the Saudi Arabia embassy, one of those, I can't remember. And so the sheikh sends me down with his right-hand guy, but I won't say his name. Anyway, so I go down with his right-hand man, and they turned us down. The right-hand man of the sheikhs is very upset. He's trying to talk to him, trying to convince him that they've got to give me a visa, and that no, the Americans weren't allowed. So we go back to his palace, and his guy explains to the sheikh, says, well, they said no, and this is not a guy you say no to. So he said, what? That they said no to me? So he said, he made a couple of phone calls. He said, now you go back and you ask for this commander. And anyway, we got it. Boom, they welcomed us with welcoming arms. They didn't know, who this guy was. So anyway, we were able to get in, but it was a comedy of errors, all of us finally getting in, and we found this 4-year-old girl after a lot of searching and guys in the streets, and we found her in a small village, and with what we believe to be, I gotta be real careful here. I can't signify who this was, because things happen, that there's no statute of limitations for. Anyway, we located the girl in a village, a Bedouin village, and suffice it to say, we got her out of the village, and we're going to the river to have a boat. I was guaranteed that a boat would be in the river. I don't know. I have to think about this more than, because I just don't want to identify people that were there. But anyway, we were going to the river. I'd been guaranteed that there would be a boat in the river, and Paul was with me, and we were running, and we had the child, and we didn't have the mother, and we're racing to get to this. We're in a Jeep. We get to our Jeep that is waiting for us. We jump into that, and we're headed for the river, and guys on camels are chasing us, literally, screaming, and that's what they do. These guys that ride these camels have this yell. It sounds like American Indians, but it's a kind of a yeah, and they're all chasing after you and shooting at you. And when we got to, Paul said, the boat better be there. I said, I swear to God, the boat will be there, damn it. And we got just over this little cliff and around this corner to look down at the Nile River. And there's a blue Nile and a white Nile. Most people don't know this. But there's a blue Nile and a white Nile. And Khartoum sits in the middle like that. And back during the days of Sir Lawrence of Libya, Sir Lawrence of Arabia, they dug a channel between the blue Nile and the white Nile, which opened up this huge channel here, and Khartoum was in the center, so it was the largest moat in the world, right, that surrounded Khartoum, and it's still that way today, obviously. And so we are way back here and trying to get to Khartoum, and we come over and we see there is a boat there. I said, Paul, see, there was a boat. However, the boat that was there was a really long canoe. I can't even imagine how long it was. It was probably 12. It was probably 18-foot long canoe, and sort of like a bonka boat, but it didn't have the two sides. It had one, I believe, on one side. Anyway, it didn't have a motor. The way it was being moved forward, this guy had this huge stick, right? And he pushed it into the Nile, the bottom of the Nile, and that was how it propelled the boat. Anyway, we got into the boat, and it was able to get us enough forward that nobody could see where we were, or we had gotten away and nobody could get to us. That was probably my most exciting case. Then there was a bunch of stuff. When we finally got her and we got to the ambassador's house, and he had to have a plane flown in to get them, and then I put them on the plane to get out to fly them back to Germany with my Mike, my Persian investigator. I still had to go back to the original village that we had gone to, or the village where the village elder was there, and the policeman, I guess he's the policeman of that village, and I'd given them my passport, and now we had to go get my passport back, otherwise I couldn't get out of the country. And I didn't want to leave my passport there. I could have gotten on a plane and gotten out with the ambassador, or with the the plane he called, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted my passport back, and I didn't want to be persona non gratis in Sudan. Although that may sound funny, a lot of people couldn't care less. I knew that I was going to be brought back there for other cases, because I knew there were other cases in Sudan of Western children, German children, all different nationalities, and I was hired to go back there three different times.